My life is a miracle. Every child has a story of God's love to share. Shalom world, tune into God's love story.
Hi, I'm Amy Catappan. Welcome to Booked. Today we're joined by Carmela Martino, an author, speaker, and writing teacher. She wrote her first book, Rosa Sola, a middle grade novel, while working on her MFA in writing for children and young adults at Vermont College. Her second book, a young adult historical novel entitled Playing by Heart, has won numerous awards, including the Catholic Arts and Letters Award and a Moonbeam Children's Book Award Gold Medal. Her articles for adults have appeared in publications such as the Chicago Tribune, Catholic Parent, and the New Catholic Explorer. Carmela also teaches writing classes at the College of DuPage and blogs about teaching and writing at teachingauthors.com. Carmela, welcome to Booked.
Thank you for having me, Amy. I'm happy to be here.
So you've had 2 books published that have won many awards, both inside the Catholic publishing world and outside. But I really want to talk today about your newer one, Playing by Heart. Can you just start off by giving us sort of the elevator pitch so we know what your book is about?
Sure. So Playing by Heart is the story of Amelia Salvini. She's a talented musician, and she dreams of marrying a man who will love music the way she does. But she lives in the shadow of her older sister, Maria, who is a gifted linguist and has a talent for science and math. And as the second sister, Maria would typically be sent to a convent and not allowed to marry. It's especially ironic in the story because Maria is the one who has a calling. She wants to go to be a nun, but her father won't allow it. His goal is to use Maria as bait to bring Milan's high society to his home for meetings and entertain them because he wants to become a nobleman. So Amelia decides that she's going to make her musical talents as crucial to her father's quest as her sister's, but she doesn't realize that in doing so, she threatens not only her own dreams, but her sister's happiness.
And this is based on 2 real-life sisters,
Yes.
right, from 18th century Milan. So tell us about them and how they inspired your story.
It's based on the Agnesi sisters. Their father was Pietro Agnesi, who was wealthy. His family had a silk business, but he wanted to be a nobleman. And when he found out his oldest daughter, her name was Maria Gaetana Agnesi, had a gift for languages and also for math and science, he hired the best tutors and started having these meetings in his home to attract Milan's aristocracy in the hope they would influence and help him become a nobleman. When he found out his younger sister had a talent for music, she joined these meetings to help him in his quest. But he manipulated and used his daughters. His eldest, Gaetana, she really wanted to be a nun. She wanted to help the poor. She did not like being the center of attention. She actually asked her father when she turned 18 for permission to become a nun to work with an order that helped the homeless. But he said no, because he didn't have his noble status yet. And then suddenly when he died in 1752, she was free. And she took her portion of the inheritance, went and helped the poor, and later the archbishop asked her to be the director of the women's section of a new homeless shelter for the city. Meanwhile, her sister became the first Italian woman to write a serious opera, had her operas performed in public in Milan, which for a female composer at that time was highly unusual. And so I heard about Gaetana as a mathematician. My undergraduate degree is in math and computer science, and I was just so impressed with her that I wanted people to know her story.
And so then you turn it into this beautiful work of fiction where you have these Catholic elements woven into it. Not only the one sister considering becoming a nun, but also just their prayer life, I think, is so naturally woven into the story. Do you consider yourself more of a Catholic who writes books for teens or an author who writes Catholic books? How is your faith and your writing kind of interwoven together?
My faith is part of who I am, I feel. I'm a cradle Catholic. I went to Catholic elementary school, and it's just how I feel, how I see life. When I am inspired to write a story, they happen to have Catholic characters in them. I don't set out to write a story with a moral. I don't try to preach. I just have these characters who believe in God, have a Catholic perspective, sometimes struggle with their faith, and I try to make that a natural part of the story.
So then when you're writing the book and you're working on it, does it impact your faith journey at all? Do you find yourself praying the way that maybe the sisters pray? Or
very much it affects my faith journey. And this novel in particular, because of the themes, I forgot to mention, really, even though there's romance in it, there's other elements, it's really the story of two girls trying to discern their calling and how God wants them to be in this world, what God wants of them. And in writing the story and focusing on that theme, I had to struggle with my own calling. I originally set out to write a nonfiction book about Gaetana, the mathematician, but I wasn't able to sell it, and I felt very frustrated, and I prayed about it, and it just happened that one of the editors who rejected that manuscript suggested that I write a novel about these two girls because of the conflict with the father and everything else. And I really prayed about that because I have never written a historical novel before, and a novel like this in that time period would require so much research and work, and I just didn't know if I was up to it. But I felt God calling me to that, and I really felt that that's what I was meant to do. A couple of times I almost quit though, and I would pray, and God would give me sometimes very overt signs about that I was meant to stick with it. One of them stands out so much in my mind. I really needed time away to work on the manuscript. And so I signed up for a writing retreat that all you do was you go there, they'd give you a room and meals, and you could just write the whole time. I didn't know when I got there that the facility was also used for Catholic retreats. And I went into the room that they assigned for me. I didn't ask for any special room. I just said, I want a room, private room. And I walk in, and hanging on the wall is a painting, a copy of a Renaissance painting of the Annunciation.
wow.
Well, there is a scene in my book with a Renaissance painting of the Annunciation, and I thought, okay, God, you really want me to do this? I'll do it.
Sometimes he kind of hits us over the head, like very clear signs. I love it when he does that. I love it when he does that. So that's very interesting that like you were thinking nonfiction book, but then someone comes and gives you this idea and saying, no, make it a novel. We do have so many Catholic nonfiction books out there. Many of the authors that I interview for a book are Catholic nonfiction authors. What do you think is the draw and the benefit of fiction, especially for young people?
Well, I think for young people, history can be a turnoff, and learning about people of the past can be like, they think, how can I relate to somebody who lived 300 years ago? And I know for me, I love to read historical fiction, and I especially love historical fiction that weaves in real events and real people. And that's what I set out to write, a story that wove in real people that readers could still relate to. They had problems that the readers could still relate to today, but told them about the history and gave them insight into what life might have been like 300 years ago.
In addition to winning a number of awards, I believe 9 different awards for playing by art, your book has also been recommended for a mother-daughter book club for girls ages 11 and up that is recommended by the Totally Feminine Genius Generations Book Club. Why do you think this book has been recommended for a mother-daughter or grandmother, granddaughter, aunt, niece kind of book club?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with what kind of conversations it could stimulate. And one of those conversations that I hope for is the mothers talking about how the girls in the story are so limited in the culture that they live in, how life was so different for girls back then. In upper class Italy at that time, there were only 2 options for young women. They were either in an arranged marriage or they were sent to a convent, whether or not they had a calling. And so, yet the girls in my story managed to be obedient and still use the gifts God gave them for their calling, for God's plan for them. So I think it'd be really great discussion for the mothers and grandmothers to talk about, look at how limited life was in the past and the options, compare that to the options we have today, compare and contrast. And those mothers and grandmothers might even share how life might have been different for them at the age that these teens are now. I know in my case, with an undergrad degree in math, when I was in college, there were only 2 or 3 girls in the whole lecture hall. in the math classes. Hopefully that's changed today. But
Well, at my time, it was still about the same. I was one of 4 girls in my calculus class in college.
So girls can come to appreciate we are making progress. Hopefully by the time they get to college, it'll be a little different. But the mothers and grandmothers can share their own experience and help these girls. And at the same time, I hope they can also talk about how some things are timeless, how some of the issues the girls deal with in the story still apply to today's teens. Like, how do you figure out what your calling is? How do you discern that? How do you use your gifts for God's purpose? And, typical things like sibling rivalry and trying to please a parent whose goals for you may be different than what you see for yourself. So those are issues that I think would be good things for parents and grandparents to talk about with young readers. And I have a number of discussion questions they can download off my website. I also have a teacher's guide that teachers can use to extend the history segment and information in the book too.
So what are you working on next? What can we look forward to?
Well, God again calls me. He's called me back to that nonfiction biography, that story of Catappan A. I intended to be for young readers. I still want to inspire them, not only to show girls that they could pursue math, but to learn about this woman who I think of as the Mother Teresa of Milan. I mean, she just devoted more than half her life to working with the poor. She died in the facility where she worked because she wanted to live near the people, and she paid for her own meals and her own wood to cook her meals because she didn't want to take any money away from the residents. And so I really feel strongly that I want people to know about her, and too few people do. But I'm also, again, anxious because to be successful, I'm going to try a totally different approach to this biography because the other approach obviously didn't work. I couldn't find a publisher, and I feel that's what God's calling me to. But it's going to call me to stretch as a writer. So I'm in prayer, and hopefully God will show me the way.
Well, we will pray that God will lead you on the right path to tell the right story, because I think not only does your novel bring about important things about faith and about young women growing into themselves, I think, as you said, finding out the true life story of one of the women that this is based on, I think could be so important to share. So we will pray that God leads you on the right way.
I can use all my prayers.
In the meantime, if people want to learn more about you and your books, where can they find out information?
Well, I have a website, www.carmelamartino.com. Carmela only has one L in it. And there's, as I said, you can download book discussion questions, teacher's guide. You can download an excerpt from the novel. You can also read the first chapter of my earlier book from the website. And if anybody's interested, sign up for my creativity newsletter and get tips on being creative and following your calling.
Next up, we're going to talk with a young reader by the name of Emily Amen and her aunt, Carrie Wiak, who bought Playing by Heart as a gift. Carrie and Emily, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Carrie, let's start with you. You chose to buy Playing by Heart for Emily as a gift. Can you tell us why you picked this particular book?
Well, I had the privilege of knowing Carmela as she was writing the book, so I knew that it was coming out. And Emily is an avid reader, so we share that love of books. So when I heard the content, and of course the main character is Emilia, and Emily also has an interest and love for music, so it just seemed like the perfect combination of a really positive girl message that she would enjoy.
Well, as a reading teacher and an aunt 13 times over who gifts a lot of books, I really appreciate and endorse this idea of giving gifts to young readers. Emily, what did you think of the book when you read it?
I really liked it. One of my favorite parts is that Amelia and her sister Maria have like a really strong relationship. And I love that Amelia is so invested in music.
Yeah, I could see you having a connection with that.
Yeah.
And we were just talking with the professor about seeing ourselves in like a mirror, how a book can be a mirror for us. So it sounds like this was a little bit of a mirror experience for you. You could kind of see yourself in Emilia, right?
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
You don't play a keyboard instrument, though. What do you play, Emily?
I play piano.
Oh, you do play piano. Oh, so then you could really relate to her being a keyboardist. Oh, how lovely. I didn't realize that.
Now, would you recommend it to your friends? Do you think some of them would like it?
Yes, I would really recommend it to my friends. I love how Amelia and her sister are so advanced for their time, and it was really empowering to read because they like pushed away stereotypes and didn't let anything hold them back.
Yeah, I love that part of the book too. What about the faith part of it? I mean, the characters are obviously young Catholic women. Did that part impact you at all, how you see your Catholic faith? Or did you look at these women and go, oh yeah, I see how they're incorporating prayer in their life?
Yeah, one part that really stood out to me was when Amelia's in the harpsichord salon and she sees the portrait of the Madonna and baby Jesus, and she sees the tender look in her eyes, and she sees it reflected in her mother's eyes and later in her stepmother's eyes, and that made me see how Mary is a mother to all of us. That's basically it.
Is that the kind of reaction you think you readers would have?
I'm really touched because that specific scene, to relate that way, that's just beautiful. I'm glad you caught that, because I don't know how many readers catch those things, so it's lovely that you caught that.
I remember that scene too, and it is a really beautiful and moving scene. Well, Emily and Carrie, thank you both for joining us today to share your thoughts about Carmela's book.
Our pleasure. Thank you for asking us.
Thank you.
Next up is Dr. Roxanne Owens, chair of the Teacher Education Program at DePaul University in Chicago. Dr. Owens was one of the first readers of Playing by Heart, and she gave it a hearty endorsement. Dr. Owens, welcome to Booked.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
I enjoyed your endorsement, and you mentioned in it that it is a can't put down sort of book, which as a middle school teacher myself, I love it when kids say it's a can't put down kind of a book. Why did you say that? What makes this book so hard to put down?
You know, books do so many things for people. They can help you look inside yourself. They can help you be empathetic to others. They can help you understand things about yourself. There's a very famous article in children's literature by Professor Rudine Sims Bishop. She has this very famous analogy that books can be mirrors, windows, or sliding doors. And they help you see yourself. They help as a mirror. They help you see outside of yourself, and they help you go back and forth into your own world and into other worlds. And I think one of the things that Carmela's book does is that it does all of those things. It helps kids to see their own experiences. It helps them see other experiences, and it helps them to go back and forth into understanding all kinds of experiences. And whenever a book can do that, you can't put it down.
Yeah, you really do get transported into 18th century Italy in this book, don't you?
But yeah, the feelings in the book, the falling in love,
yeah,
the practicing music, all of the emotions and the feelings in it, everybody can relate to, whether you're living in that century or this century.
Well, that's kind of a great lead into another thing I wanted to pull out of your endorsement. You said it's based on the lives of extraordinary real women who were quite ahead of their time. And I was wondering, how do you feel this novel, which takes place in the 18th century, speak to young women today?
So the girls in the book, they really were bound by certain rules. Yeah. You know, their father got to decide who they were going to marry, or if they were going to go to the convent. Yeah. And, the one girl in the book had a real calling, a real vocation that she felt. And it was, but her father, she was not the one her father felt should go to the convent. And her father got to decide, the father got to decide who was going to get married and who wasn't. Women today would never imagine. So I think that it's very informative for our girls today to be able to see how people lived in certain other eras.
Yeah, I think they can learn a lot. There's definitely, for me, a sense of female empowerment, because these girls were trying to work within the rules of society at the time, but still express themselves and be good daughters, but stand up for themselves at the same time.
Yes, they were very respectful of their father. At all times, they were respectful of the father, but they also tried to work around him. They worked with the other women in the story to try to work around their father.
True. Good female relationships portrayed here as well as father-daughter relationships. So I wanted to ask you one more thing. There was a judge from the Catholic Press Association, Carmela's book won an award from them, that said so much of the history of Italy is noted in this book that it could be a selected read for high schools. As the chair of the teacher education program at DePaul, what do you think of that? Do you see this book as being something that could fit into classroom curriculum?
When you look at your traditional history textbook, you open up the chapter on Italy. You're going to see some maps, you're going to see some short paragraph biographies of some famous Italians, maybe some famous battles. You are not going to, in any way, shape, or form, get into any of the interesting narratives about fascinating things that happened. Kids want to know about the lives of the people. They want to get into what really was life like. Books like this tell you what life was like. So unless a teacher is going to actually take the time to get outside of a history textbook, kids are never going to really love history the way we want them to love history. So absolutely, books like this, taking fiction and nonfiction literature books, is the only way we're going to help kids to love history the way we want them to love history.
Yeah, and really see, I think, the full range of what was going on. All those sensory details that great writers like Carmela put in there, it provides, like you said, that sliding glass door opportunity to step into it and really experience what it's like. And let's face it, a lot of our history books won't add the religion element in there,
Absolutely
and yet it's so
not.
naturally added into Carmela's story that it's never a forced thing, but it's part of the culture.
It is absolutely an important part of the culture, and it's so seamlessly incorporated into this book in such a beautiful way. That's the other thing that is so lovely about this book.
Oh, I have to just say thank you so much, Dr. Owens. That means so much to me, coming from you as a professional in industry, as a teacher, and then also as a reader who I know you've told me how much you enjoyed the book. So thank you. Your endorsement means a lot to me.
Yes, and it was so fun to talk with you, Dr. Owens, to hear all the details behind your endorsement. Thank you for joining us here on Booked.
My pleasure.
And to all of our viewers, thank you for joining us once again on Booked. Until next time, happy reading.
To all of the viewers of Shalom TV throughout the world, I want to encourage you not only to support this amazing media apostolate, but to spread the word to others. We all know how the internet and mass media are polluting the world with the poison of pornography and so much other forms of materialism. This is the source of eternal life, the gospel, and Shalom TV is consecrated to spreading the word of Christ. Thank you.